Settle in, friend. Pull the blanket a little closer, let your shoulders go soft, and let the world outside your window grow quiet for a while. Tonight we are going to travel a long way back, to a slower country and a softer century, to a little wooden farmhouse standing alone in the green rolling hills of southern Indiana. The year is 1890. The morning is the 9th of September, and the air smells of cut hay and wood smoke and the cool, clean breath of autumn just beginning to think about arriving. The farmhouse is small. 2 rooms downstairs, a low loft above, a porch that sags a little on its left side from years of leaning into the weather. Around it, the land lies in long, easy folds, the kind of land that does not hurry anyone. There are pastures the color of green tea, and beyond them a thin, dark line of woodland, oak and hickory and walnut trees still heavy with summer leaves. A single dirt road, soft and rutted, winds past the gate and disappears over a low rise toward the village of Henryville, 3 miles off, where the Methodist church bell rings on Sundays and can be heard, when the wind is right, all the way out here on the Sanders place. It is just before sunrise. The sky over the eastern fields is the color of a ripe peach pressed against pale blue china. A rooster, somewhere behind the barn, clears his throat and tries his first uncertain note of the day. In the kitchen of the farmhouse, a kettle is beginning to whisper on the cast-iron stove, and the warm, comfortable smell of coffee and wood ash drifts gently up through the floorboards. Outside, 2 milk pails stand washed and waiting by the well. A gray tabby cat sleeps curled inside one of them, undisturbed by anything at all. And inside the small bedroom at the back of the house, by the soft yellow light of a single oil lamp turned low, a young mother named Margaret Ann is holding a brand new baby boy against her chest. He has just arrived in the world, this tiny pink wrinkled traveler, and he is making the small, surprised, snuffling sounds that all newborn babies make, as if he cannot quite believe how warm and quiet everything is out here. His father, a sturdy young farmer named Wilbur, stands in the doorway with his hat in both hands and a look on his face that is half amazement and half tiredness and entirely tender. The midwife, an aunt from down the road, washes her hands in a chipped enamel basin and hums a hymn under her breath. They will call him Harland. Harland David Sanders. A simple, sturdy, country sort of name for a simple, sturdy, country sort of family. No one in the room knows, of course, that the soft little hands curled against his mother's collarbone will one day shake the hands of governors and kings of industry. No one knows that the small mouth, just now learning how to breathe, will one day taste 11 herbs and 11 spices and remember the precise proportion of each. No one knows that the gentle weight of him, this baby barely heavier than a sack of flour, will travel one day in the trunk of a Ford automobile from town to town, town to town, knocking on 1,000 back doors. Tonight he is only Harland, and he is only 1 hour old, and the world he has entered is no bigger than this room, this lamplight, this slow, steady heartbeat under his cheek. Outside, the sun lifts itself softly over the line of hickory trees. The light pours, the way light pours in old Indiana, the way it has poured for 1,000 mornings before this one, golden, unhurried, falling in long, warm bands across the floorboards of the porch. A pair of mourning doves call to each other from the eaves of the barn, low and round and patient, the gentlest sound in all of creation. In the kitchen, the kettle has begun to sing. In the pasture, a brown cow lifts her head and looks once toward the house, considers nothing in particular, and goes back to her grazing. This is the world he is born into. A world of milk pails and wood smoke. A world where the days arrive on foot and the nights come down like quilts. A world where a small American century is just beginning to turn, slow as a barn door on its hinges, and a baby boy named Harland Sanders is breathing his very first breaths, here on a small farm in old Indiana, 1890, with the morning light coming in soft and gold. The years that follow are quiet years. Years of small chores and small joys, of milk warm from the cow and bread rising on the back of the stove, of his father walking in from the fields at dusk with the dust of Indiana on his boots and the smell of sun-warm hay clinging soft to his shirt. Harland is a watchful child, a serious child, with steady gray eyes and a soft Indiana drawl, and he loves his father the way small boys love their fathers in those long-ago country years, wholly and without question, and with the full unspoken weight of a small heart that has not yet learned that the world can take such things away. But the world, gentle listener, can take such things away. It is the summer of 1896. Harland is 6 years old. The corn is high and green in the Indiana fields, and the cicadas are singing their long, slow song in the elm trees behind the farmhouse, and one quiet afternoon his father comes home from work, feverish and tired, and lies down on the bed in the front room and does not rise again. A summer fever. A fever such as country families knew in those days, common as rain and just as merciless. Within a few short days he is gone, and the small frame house in Henryville goes very still. And a 6-year-old boy stands in the doorway of the front room, barefoot on the pine floorboards, and tries to understand a thing that no 6-year-old has ever truly understood. That his father is not coming back. That the chair at the head of the table will be empty now. That the world has changed, slow and complete, like a season turning while you slept. His mother, Margaret Sanders, is a soft-spoken woman with tired, kind eyes, and she does what country mothers have always done in such hours. She folds her grief into her apron, and she goes to find work. There is a tomato cannery in town that will hire her by the day, and a seamstress in Henryville who needs help with the long hems, and so each morning, before the sun is fully up, she ties her bonnet beneath her chin and walks the dirt road into town to earn the few coins that will keep bread on the table and a fire in the stove. And before she goes, she kneels down on the kitchen floor beside her oldest boy, and she takes his small hands in her own, and she tells him, gently, that he is the man of the house now. That his little brother Clarence and his baby sister Catherine will need someone to mind them. That there will be cooking to do. And bread to bake. And a stove to tend. And that she trusts him. And the small boy nods. He is 6 years old. And so begins, dear listener, the quiet apprenticeship of a great American cook. In the soft yellow light of an Indiana morning, in a kitchen no bigger than a pantry, a barefoot child drags a wooden crate across the worn pine floor and pushes it against the iron belly of the family stove. He climbs up. He stands on tiptoe. and he peers down into a world of cast-iron skillets and tin measuring cups, of flour barrels and lard buckets, of the warm metallic breath of a wood fire just beginning to catch. He is small enough that the stove rim comes nearly to his chin. He is small enough that he must hold the long-handled spoon with both hands. But he is patient, and he is watchful. And he remembers, in some quiet corner of his small heart, the way his mother's hands moved through the morning, the soft thump of the bread dough on the table, the careful pinch of salt, the slow turning of potatoes browning gold in the pan. He tries to bake bread, and the first loaf comes out heavy as a stone, and he sets it on the windowsill anyway, and he is proud of it. He tries to fry potatoes, and they scorch a little on the bottom, and he learns to lower the flame. He tries to brown a slab of country ham, and the smell rises sweet and salty into the cool Indiana air, and his little brother comes padding in from the next room on bare feet, drawn by the warmth of it, and sits at the kitchen table with wide, solemn eyes, waiting to be fed. And so a small boy on a wooden crate in a quiet farmhouse in the year 1896 lifts a plate of slightly burnt potatoes and carries it carefully across the kitchen to his hungry kin. And without knowing it, without ever once dreaming it, he has just cooked his very first meal. The years that follow do not arrive in a hurry. They drift in, the way seasons drift across the low hills of Indiana, one quiet morning folding into the next. Harland grows tall and lean and serious-eyed, with his mother's careful hands and his father's slow, considering walk. By the time he is 13, he has already left the little farmhouse in Henryville and gone out into the wider world to earn his own keep. And the world, in those long, soft years before the First Great War, is a patchwork of small towns, connected by dirt roads and rail lines, lit at night by oil lamps and the orange glow of distant locomotives. He works on a farm first, for a neighbor, for $15 a month and a place to sleep in the hayloft. He is good with animals. He is good with his hands. He is, even then, the kind of boy who rises before the sun and finishes his chores without being asked twice. But the farm is only the beginning. At 15, he lies about his age and joins the United States Army. They send him to Cuba, where the air is heavy and green and smells of salt and unfamiliar flowers, and he serves out a quiet 6 months as a teamster, driving mules through the warm dust. When he comes home, the country is changing. The railroads are stretching their iron arms farther and farther into the heartland, and a young man with strong shoulders can find work along almost any line. So Harland becomes a railroad fireman. Picture him now, 16 years old, standing in the cab of a great black locomotive as it thunders through the Alabama night. The firebox door swings open, and the heat pours out like the breath of some patient, enormous animal, and Harland lifts his shovel, and lifts it again, and feeds the engine coal by coal. The sweat runs down his temples. The sparks rise into the dark above the cornfields. The whistle calls out long and lonesome at every crossing, and the town slips past in little constellations of porch lights, and somewhere up ahead, the first gray of morning is already waiting. He does this work for years. He learns the rhythm of it, the patient bend and lift, the kindness one shows to a hot iron stove. He sleeps in boarding houses where the bed springs creak, and the windows are always open to let in the night air. He saves his pay. He sends letters home. He is, in his own quiet way, a young man learning the long, slow truth that life will not be hurried. And when the railroad work runs thin, he tries other things. He studies law by correspondence course, sitting up under a kerosene lamp at a kitchen table, tracing the words in a borrowed book with one careful finger. For 3 small years he serves as a country justice of the peace down in Little Rock, settling neighbors, arguments with a soft voice and a fair hand. Then a quarrel of his own in the courtroom ends that career, and he packs his case and moves on. He sells insurance in Indiana. He goes door to door, hat in hand, his shoes polished against the mud. He listens, in farmhouse parlors, to the worries of strangers, and writes their names into a little leather book. He does well enough at it, for a while. Then he doesn't, and he moves on. He runs a steamboat ferry across the Ohio River, the brown water glinting beneath him, the paddle wheel turning slow and patient like a clock that keeps only its own hours. He sells tires for the Michelin Company. He sells lamps, the new electric kind, traveling town to town with a sample case, demonstrating the soft, warm bulb in dim country stores, while children gather at the window to watch. Some of these tries last a year. Some last only a season. None of them last. He is married now with babies at home, and a man with babies at home cannot afford too long a quiet. Yet through every failure, through every quiet packing up of one more sample case and one more set of hopes, there is in Harland Sanders a strange and steady patience. He does not grow bitter. He does not give up. He simply, the next morning, begins again. He is in his 30s now. His hair is beginning, here and there, to lighten. He has tried, by a careful count, nearly a dozen careers. None of them have caught hold. But somewhere ahead of him, on a quiet stretch of 2-lane road in eastern Kentucky, a small service station with a single gas pump and an empty back room is waiting. And Harland, though he does not know it yet, is on his way. S. 25, a 2-lane ribbon of asphalt that winds south out of the Cumberland foothills and threads its way through the small towns of eastern Kentucky like a length of gray thread pulled gently through green cloth. In the spring of 1930, Harland Sanders, now 40 years old, with his hair already beginning to turn at the temples and a tiredness behind his eyes that comes from too many failed beginnings, drives that road in a second-hand Ford and pulls off in the little town of Corbin. Corbin is not much. A few brick storefronts, a railroad crossing, a courthouse square with a bandstand and a single old elm. But the highway runs straight through the middle of it, and the highway, in those years, is everything. S. 25, with a single shell pump out front and a tin roof above it that rattles softly whenever the wind moves through the pines. There is a small office with a desk and a kerosene stove. There is a back room with a concrete floor and a window that looks out onto a stand of dogwood trees. And there is, just behind the building, a long view of low blue hills, folding one into another, like a quilt that has been laid down to dry in the afternoon sun. Harland stands in the doorway on his first morning and breathes in the smell of motor oil and damp earth and far-off wood smoke, and for the first time in a long while, he feels something quiet settle inside his chest. This, he thinks, might be a place a man could stay. In the beginning, it is only a service station. He pumps gas. He patches tires. He wipes the windshields of Model A Fords and old farm trucks, and the occasional long black touring car heading down toward Knoxville. He learns the names of the regulars, the timber haulers, and the traveling salesmen, and the country doctors making their rounds. And he learns, too, the gentle rhythm of a highway town, the way the morning traffic comes in pulses, the long, warm lull of mid-afternoon, the soft ebb of headlights at dusk, drifting south like a slow river of fireflies. But travelers are hungry creatures. They climb out of their cars at his pump, stretching their backs, dust on their hats, and they ask him, almost shyly, if he knows where a man might find a hot supper somewhere along the road. At first, Harland just points them toward the diner up the street. But the diner is small, and the road is long, and after a while he begins to think, well, he has a stove, doesn't he? He has the cooking he taught himself as a boy back in Henryville, standing on a wooden crate to reach the cast iron skillet, frying eggs for his little brother and sister while their mother worked the cannery shift. He has those recipes still, tucked away inside him like pressed flowers between the pages of a Bible. So he sets a small table in the back room. Just one, at first. He covers it with a clean checked cloth. He buys a few mismatched chairs at a farm sale for 10 cents apiece. And one quiet evening, when a tired family pulls in for gas and the woman asks, half joking, if there's anywhere in town to get her children fed before the long drive home, Harland says, well, ma'am, I do believe I could fix you something myself if you'd care to sit down a moment. He cooks some country ham, sliced thin and laid in a hot iron pan until the edges curl and turn the color of autumn oak leaves. He cooks them biscuits, the kind his mother used to make, brushed with butter and pulled apart at the seam so the steam rises out in soft white curls. He cooks them pan-fried chicken, dredged in flour and pepper and a few private pinches of this and that, and he sets it all down on the checked cloth and stands back with his hands behind him, watching their faces. The little girl closes her eyes when she takes her first bite. Word, in a small town along a busy highway, travels the way smoke travels in still air, slowly, patiently, finding every crack and corner of the county. By the end of that summer, the back room has 6 stools at a wooden counter and a hand-lettered sign in the window that reads, simply, Sanders Café. And travelers, weary from the road, are just beginning, to remember the name. And so the years begin their slow, soft turning, the way years do in a small Kentucky town. Without much announcement, without much fuss, only the quiet shuffle of seasons across the front porch, and the low hum of trucks rolling past on the highway, north toward Lexington, south toward Knoxville, east toward the long blue shoulders of the mountains. Inside the cafe, in the dim back kitchen behind a swinging wooden door, a man in a clean white apron is bent over a cast iron skillet, listening. Listening, mostly, to the oil. For Harland has come to understand, in the long, patient way a man understands a thing he loves, that frying chicken is not really cooking at all. It is a kind of listening. The oil tells you, in its small, bright voice, when it is ready and when it is not. A soft hush at first, then a brighter whisper, then a steady, contented song, when a piece of chicken slides in and the crust begins to gather around it like a warm coat on a cold morning. He stands there in the lamplight, head tilted, the way a man stands at the edge of a creek to hear the water, and he learns the language of that pan one quiet afternoon at a time. The recipe his mother taught him, back in the small kitchen in Henryville, had been a simple thing. Flour, salt, a little pepper, the bird turned gently in the skillet under a heavy lid. A good plain country supper. But Harland has never been quite at peace with plain. There is, in him, the faint, stubborn restlessness of a man who once stood beside steam locomotives and watched whole landscapes blur into mist. A man who has sold tires and lamps and insurance in a dozen towns. A man who has felt all his life that somewhere just past the horizon there is a thing he is meant to do well. And so, in the long, hush-soft evenings of the 1930s, after the last traveler has paid and gone, he begins to tinker. He pulls down the old tin spice canisters from their shelf, one by one, and lays them out across the wooden counter like a row of small soldiers. Black pepper, white pepper, paprika smelling faintly of sun-warmed gardens. Sage, the green of old churchyards. Dried thyme that crumbles between his fingers like the memory of a summer afternoon. Mustard, ginger, a careful breath of garlic. A little of this, a little of that. He measures into a battered enamel cup, mutters to himself, scrapes it back, begins again. Outside the window, moths flicker around the porch light. A freight train, somewhere in the distance, calls once and is answered by nothing at all. Night after night, the kitchen smells of warm flour and curing spice. Night after night, he writes small notes to himself on the back of grocery receipts in a careful round hand. Too much sage, not enough white pepper, try less, try less. He is 60 years from his mother's stove, and yet he is, in some quiet way, still a small boy standing on a kitchen chair, trying to make supper good enough for his brother and sister to smile. And then, one ordinary morning, a heavy crate arrives at the back door of the cafe, packed in straw, addressed to Times H. Sanders, Corbin, Kentucky. Inside it sits a strange and gleaming new contraption, a pressure cooker, the latest thing out of the factories up north. He lifts it out with both hands, the way a man lifts something he half suspects might change his life. He sets it on the stove. He reads the little instruction booklet, slowly, twice. He thinks for a long while. Then he smiles, the small private smile of a man who has just heard, faintly, the click of a lock he has been turning at for years. Pressure, you see, does for chicken what patience does for a life. It coaxes the tenderness up from the bone. It seals the juices in. It cooks the bird through in a fraction of the old skillet hour, while the crust outside stays gold and crisp and singing. He pairs the new machine with the old blend. He counts, one quiet evening at the counter, the spices in his careful tin. 1, 2, 3, all the way to asterisk 11. 11 herbs and spices. He folds the small slip of paper on which he has written them, twice, and tucks it into the inside pocket of his vest, close to the warm, steady drum of his heart. And outside the lit window of Sanders' Café, the long Kentucky night settles softly down, like a quilt drawn up to the chin of a sleeping child. and the seasons turn the way seasons do in that part of the world, almost without anyone noticing. The dogwoods bloom and let their petals fall on the road outside the cafe like a small white snow. The summer comes in heavy and green, with cicadas sawing in the trees and the heat shimmering on the asphalt of US 25. The autumn paints the hills in slow, careful brushstrokes of cinnamon and rust and old gold, and the winter lays a thin lace of frost on the gas pumps in the morning, which Harland wipes away with the back of his sleeve before the first traveler pulls in. And in all those quiet seasons, the chicken keeps frying. Pan after pan, batch after batch, 11 herbs and 11 spices folded together in their secret bag. The pressure cooker hisses its long, contented hiss on the back burner. The smell drifts out the screen door and down the road, faint as wood smoke, and travelers a mile away roll down their car windows and lift their noses, the way deer lift their noses to a familiar wind. Word spreads, the way good news is always spread in country places. Slowly, by mouth, over fence posts and church suppers, and shared cigarettes at filling stations. These, one man asks another, somewhere on the long ribbon of a Kentucky highway. Smoss, and the second man nods slowly, and a small private smile comes onto his face, the way a small private smile comes onto the face of a person remembering a favorite song. Oh, asterisk, he says. Sangaf. Truckers begin to plan their routes around supper at Sanders Café. Salesmen on long, lonely loops through the South Circle Corbin in pencil on their road maps. Families on their way to see grandmother in Tennessee tell their children, "Hush now, just one more hour, and then we'll stop where the chicken is." And the children press their small noses to the cold glass of the back window and watch the Kentucky dusk go by, and they wait, and at last the little cafe swims up out of the darkness like a lighted ship, and the door swings open, and the warm cinnamon and pepper smell rolls out to meet them, and they think, all their long lives afterward, that this is what happiness must smell like. And in time, the word travels further still. It travels up the hollows and over the ridges. It travels along the muddy banks of the Cumberland and the bright bend of the Kentucky River. It travels on the slow tongues of country preachers and the quick tongues of newspaper men, until at last it reaches the polished marble halls of the state capitol in Frankfort, where a governor, a man named Ruby Laffoon, with kind eyes and a careful signature, listens and nods and decides to do a small ceremonial kindness. And so, in the spring of 1935, an envelope arrives at the cafe. Stiff white paper, thick as a child's first storybook. Harland opens it at the counter, slowly, with the same careful hands he uses to peel an onion. And inside is a commission, lettered in old curling ink, naming him an honorary Kentucky colonel for his contribution to the cuisine of the Commonwealth. For the chicken. For the long, quiet years of getting it right. He reads it twice. He reads it 3 times. And then, very gently, he sets it down on the counter beside the bowl of flour and the tin of salt. And he stands there for a long moment, looking out the window at the soft Kentucky morning, and something in his weathered face goes still and shining, the way a pond goes still and shining when the wind drops at evening. Colonel Harland Sanders. He tries it on quietly, only inside his head, the way a boy tries on his father's hat in front of a mirror. And though no one quite notices the moment it begins, not him, not Claudia, not the cook out back, not the regulars at the lunch counter, a portrait begins, very slowly, to come into focus. The hair, already silvering at the temples, will keep silvering until it is the color of fresh cream. The mustache will lengthen and curl into the shape we know. A small, neat goatee will join it, like a careful afterthought. A white suit will hang, one day, in a closet not yet built. A black string tie will wait, folded in tissue, in a drawer not yet opened. Tonight, though, the Colonel is only just beginning to be the Colonel. He is still a man in a stained apron, smiling quietly down at a piece of paper on his counter, while outside, the Kentucky morning gathers its soft yellow light into the hills. The years that follow are gentle ones, the kind that pass without a person quite noticing them go. The Café on US 25 grows busier and quieter at once, busier with travelers, quieter inside Harland himself, who has finally found the steady rhythm of being where he is meant to be. The pressure cooker hisses its small, familiar song. The 11 herbs and spices keep their secret. The white suit, when he begins to wear it, suits him. The goatee comes in soft and silver, like frost gathering on a winter fence. Salesmen passing through start asking for the recipe. A few restaurants up in Indiana, then over in Tennessee, then across the river in Ohio, agree to fry his chicken in their own kitchens and pay him a nickel for every bird. It is a small thing, this nickel. It is also, though he does not yet know it, the first quiet seed of something enormous. So the years drift by. The 50s arrive with their long sedans and their chrome bumpers and their families packed in for summer trips to the Smoky Mountains. The bell over the cafe door rings and rings. Harland is 60 now, 62, 64. His hair has gone the color of clean cotton. He has become, almost without trying, an old man who is loved. And then, one ordinary afternoon, he hears the news. It comes the way most large news comes to small towns. Sideways, in pieces, over coffee. Someone has seen the surveyors. Someone else has read the paper from Lexington. There is to be a new road. A great road. A road wide enough for 4 lanes of traffic moving in each direction. Smooth as a river, fast as a thought. They are calling it Interstate 75, and it will run from the Great Lakes all the way down to the orange groves of Florida. And it will not run through Corbin. It will pass instead 7 miles to the west, through farmland and pasture and a low fold of hills where no cafe stands and no sign waits and no bell rings above any door. 7 miles. A short ride in a car. A long, long way for a man who has spent 30 years building a life on the side of a 2-lane highway. He receives the news the way he has received most hard things. Quietly, with a small nod, with hands that go on doing the next small task in front of them. He brines the chicken. He stirs the gravy. He counts the silverware into its drawers. The morning he hears, and the morning after, and the morning after that, the cafe still fills. People still come. The world has not yet caught up with the map. But the map is patient, and the map always wins. The bulldozers begin their slow work in the next county. Then the next. The new road creeps closer, mile by mile, season by season, a long gray ribbon being laid down across the green of Kentucky. And when at last it opens, the change is not loud. It is only this. The bell above the door rings a little less. then less. Then, on certain afternoons, not at all. The travelers who used to drift in dusty and hungry from US 25 are sailing now, far to the west, on smooth concrete at 65 miles an hour, their windows up, their radios soft, their children asleep against the doors. They do not see the little cafe with the white-suited man inside. They do not know it is there. The exit signs do not name it. The atlases will, in time, forget. Harland stands at his window in the long, quiet afternoons and watches the empty road. Cars used to come over that rise 3 a minute. Now there is one, and then nothing for a long while, and then another, alone. The light falls the way it always has, across the gravel lot. The pressure cooker waits. The 11 herbs and spices wait. The recipe, perfect as ever, waits. He holds on as long as he can. He is 65 and then 66. He puts a little of his savings in, and then a little more. He hopes the way old men hope, privately, without fuss. And then, one bright cold morning, the auctioneer's truck comes up the drive. They sell the tables. They sell the chairs. They sell the long counter where 1,000 strangers have leaned their elbows and laughed. They sell it all for far less than he owes, and when the gavel falls for the last time, Harland stands in the empty room and listens to the silence where the bell used to be. He walks home that evening the long way, past the dogwoods and the low stone walls, past the porches where the cicadas are tuning up for another Kentucky summer. Claudia has supper on the stove. Beans and cornbread, the simple food of people who have learned not to ask for more than the day will give. They eat without much talking. The clock on the mantel ticks the same as it always has, only now it sounds louder, the way a clock does in a house where something has just ended. He is 65 years old. His hair has gone the color of cotton bolls. His knees are slower than they used to be. He has buried a young son and watched a marriage break and rebuild itself, and he has fed strangers for 30 long years out of a kitchen that no longer belongs to him. By every reckoning the world keeps, his story is finished. The chapter is closed. The bell is sold. And then, on a quiet morning a few weeks later, the postman comes up the drive. He brings a small white envelope with a green stamp on the corner. The United States Treasury, neat and official. Harland turns it over in his thick hands at the kitchen table. He slides a butter knife under the flap, the way another man might open a letter from a long-lost friend. Inside is a check. $105. His first Social Security payment. The country's quiet way of saying, "Thank you, old man. You may rest now." He sits with it for a long time. Outside, a mourning dove is calling from the eave. Claudia pours him another cup of coffee without asking. He looks at the number printed on the check, and the number looks back at him, and somewhere inside his chest a small, steady light comes on that he has not felt in months. Most men his age would have folded that check into a Bible. Most men would have bought a new rocking chair and pulled it close to the window and let the afternoon slide gently by. There is no shame in that. There is, in fact, a great and lovely peace in it. The peace earned by a life of long working hours. But Harland Sanders has never been very good at sitting still. He goes out to the shed that afternoon. The pressure cooker is there on the high shelf, the heavy aluminum one, with the dent on the lid he has used 1,000 times. He takes it down and wipes it clean with a soft rag. He fills a paper grocery sack with little brown bags of seasoning, 11 herbs and spices, measured by his own hand the night before, the smell of them rising up like a small kitchen church. He folds a clean white suit into a flat suitcase. He folds a white shirt and a black string tie. He folds the goatee comb and the silver pocket watch and 3 pairs of socks. Then he walks out to the Ford. It is an old car by then, a heavy long sedan with running boards and a dashboard worn smooth where his palm is rested. He opens the trunk. He sets the pressure cooker in first, gentle as a sleeping cat. He sets the paper bag beside it. He sets the suitcase on top. He closes the trunk lid with a soft final sound, the way you close the lid of a hope chest. Claudia stands on the porch in her apron. She does not try to talk him out of it. She has been married to this man too long to misunderstand the look in his eyes. She only walks down the steps and tucks a packet of sandwiches into the seat beside him and a thermos of black coffee and a folded road map of the southern states with the towns circled in pencil where she thinks the cooks might be kind. He kisses her cheek. He says he will call from the next town. She says she knows. The Ford rolls down the gravel drive and out onto the 2-lane blacktop. He turns south at the crossroads into the long blue afternoon. Fields of green tobacco lean in the breeze on either side of him. A redbud tree drops its last petals onto the shoulder of the road. The radio plays low, a fiddle tune, a hymn, a man reading the livestock prices, and the sound of the tires on the warm asphalt is the sound of every traveling salesman who has ever set out alone with a sample case and a small bright hope. Somewhere ahead of him, in a town he has not yet seen, there is a back door to a kitchen, and a cook in a white apron, and a stove waiting to be lit. Harland Sanders adjusts his hat, settles his hands on the wheel, and drives quietly on into the rest of his life. The first town comes up gently out of the green Kentucky distance, the way a small boat comes up out of fog. First the steeple, then the water tower, then the low-painted roofs of the diners and the dime stores. He drives slowly down the main street with the windows half open, reading the signs the way another man might read scripture. May's Kitchen. The Bluebird. Pete's Grill. He is looking for a certain kind of place. A place with checked curtains in the window and a screen door that has been mended more than once, and a parking lot worn soft by the boots of regulars. A place where the cook is also the owner, and the owner is also the dishwasher, and the dishwasher is the man who locks the door at night. He parks around the side, never out front. He has learned that already. A man in a white suit at the front door looks like a preacher or a bill collector, and neither one is welcome at the lunch rush. So he walks around to the back, past the trash cans and the stacked milk crates, and the cat sleeping in a square of sun, and he raises his soft old hand, and he knocks. Most of the time, the door does not open at all. Sometimes a tired face appears in the crack of it, looks him up and down, hears the words pressure cooker and secret recipe, and shakes its head, and the door closes again with the small, flat sound of a polite no. He stands a moment on the back step, listens to the kitchen noises on the other side, the hiss of a griddle, the clatter of a plate, somebody laughing at somebody else's joke, and then he tips his hat to no one in particular and walks back to the Ford. He does not let it sour him. He has been told no by bigger doors than this. He has been told no by railroads and law schools and insurance companies and the whole wide American highway itself. A no from a small-town diner and a small-town afternoon is a soft thing by comparison. He marks the town in his little notebook, turns the key, and drives on. And every now and then, once in a long blue afternoon, once after a string of closed doors and polite refusals, somebody says yes. A woman wiping her hands on her apron, curious. A man with flour on his forearms, willing to be amused. A cook on a slow Tuesday who has nothing to lose by letting an old gentleman fry one batch in the back. He carries in the pressure cooker himself. He carries in the paper bag of seasoning, folded down at the top like a child's lunch sack. He rolls up his white sleeves, and in someone else's kitchen, on someone else's stove, he goes quietly to work. The smell does the rest. It always has. It rises up out of the cooker the way it once rose up out of the little café in Corbin. That warm, pepper-bright, faintly sweet, faintly secret smell. And the cook leans in, and the waitress drifts over from the counter, and somebody who came in for a cup of coffee finds himself ordering a plate. The colonel watches their faces. He knows the look. It is the same look a traveler used to get when he came in off US 25 at dusk and found, to his surprise, that supper had been waiting for him all along. When the plate is empty, the colonel makes his small, steady offer. No money up front. No fee for the recipe. Only this, a nickel. A nickel for every piece of chicken they sell. A handshake in a back kitchen. A handwritten note on a paper napkin. A promise sealed with nothing more than the trust of two tired men at the end of a long day. Some of them sign. Most of them never will. But every yes is a candle. And one by one, across Kentucky and Tennessee and Indiana and Ohio, the candles begin to flicker on. He sleeps that night in the back seat of the Ford, or in a roadside motel where the neon sign hums like a cricket, or in a cot in a kind cook's spare room. He folds his white jacket carefully over a chair. He says his prayers. He thinks of his sister and his brother around the old stove in Henryville, and of Claudia waiting somewhere down the road, and of all the kitchens still ahead of him in the soft dark, their stoves not yet lit, their back doors not yet knocked upon, waiting patiently for the quiet old man who is, kitchen by kitchen, slowly building something that does not yet have a name. And then the years go by, the way years do in a long and patient life, the way water goes by under an old wooden bridge, slow and shining and almost without sound. The pressure cooker comes out of the trunk in one town and goes back into the trunk and out again in the next, and the paper bag of seasoning is refilled and refilled, and somewhere along the way the no's begin to turn into yeses more often than not, and the yeses begin to turn into little nickel royalties, 5 cents on every chicken sold, and the nickels begin to gather, the way snowflakes gather on a barn roof in old Kentucky, quietly, without any fuss, until one morning you walk outside and the whole world is white. By the early 1960s, there are 600 kitchens frying his chicken. Then 1,000. Then more than the white-haired colonel can quite keep track of, though he tries. Driving still, always driving, his Ford rolling softly along 2-lane roads through Tennessee and Ohio and Missouri, the radio low, the seasoning bag riding shotgun like an old friend. And somewhere in those years a quiet thing happens that he barely notices at first. His face begins to appear on things. On signs above small roadside restaurants. On menus. On little cardboard cartons. And then, one ordinary afternoon, on a bucket. A red and white striped bucket, cheerful as a county fair, with the kindly old gentleman printed right there on the side. The white suit, the black string tie, the neat white goatee, the round spectacles, the gentle, slightly amused smile of a grandfather who has seen a great deal and forgiven most of it. Children in Sacramento point at the bucket and ask their mothers who the nice old man is. Mothers in Sydney bring the bucket home from a Saturday drive. Fathers in Tokyo set the bucket down in the middle of the table and the children clap their hands. The kindly grandfather on the red and white bucket travels farther in a single year than Harland Sanders ever traveled in a lifetime of driving. And he travels softly, smiling the same gentle smile in every country, in every kitchen, in every small lit window after dark. And Harlan himself, the man inside the picture, grows older the way a good oak grows older, slowly and without complaint. His hair goes from silver to snow. His goatee, which he trims each morning in the same careful way, becomes a small white badge of all the patient years. He keeps wearing the white suit, summer and winter, because it has become a kind of promise. A promise to the boy at the stove in Henryville, a promise to the cook in the little café in Corbin, a promise that he will not, even now, even in fame, become anyone other than the quiet man he has always been. He gives most of the money away, quietly, to churches, to scholarships, to small hospitals, to children he will never meet. He keeps just enough to drive his Cadillac to the next kitchen, to sleep in a clean motel, to order a slice of pie at a roadside diner, and tip the waitress more than she expects. And in the evenings, when the long day of franchises and photographs and television cameras is finally done, he comes home to a quiet porch in old Kentucky. The light there is the soft gold of a Kentucky dusk, the kind of light that lies down gently over the hills and the white fences and the slow blue ridges far away. Crickets begin their small, patient song in the grass. A single firefly drifts up out of the lawn and hangs there, blinking, as though it too has come a long way and is finally allowed to rest. He sits in his rocker. He folds his old hands in his lap. He looks out over the dimming fields of the state that gave him its name, and he is quiet for a long time, and he is at peace. The boy at the cold stove in Henryville is in him still. The young father drifting from job to job is in him still. The tired cafe owner watching the new highway take his customers away is in him still. The white-haired man on the lonely roads with the pressure cooker rattling in the trunk is in him still. And the gentle grandfather on the red and white bucket, smiling out at children all around the world, he too is in him, and he too is at peace. The fireflies come up out of the grass like small, kind stars. The porch grows dim. Somewhere a screen door eases shut. It is never, ever too late. It is never too late to begin. It is never too late to drive one more mile, knock on one more door, fry one more batch of chicken in a borrowed kitchen on a quiet evening in some small town that has not yet heard your name. Good night, Colonel. Sleep well, Harlan. The long road is behind you now, and the porch light is on.